Hi, everyone. Well, for those who don't know me, I love it when a person has a great sense of humor. So I get this really fun bio from today's guest, and I'll go through it as we go through the show. Anyway, my guest today is performer Tim Cameron. Welcome to the show, Tim.
Thank you, Nancy. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for being here. Again, like I said, I love this type of bio. It's so much fun. So the first thing I want to know is you were given a Beatles album at the age of 4. Who
Mhm.
gives somebody an album at the age of 4?
That would be my aunt Eva,
Okay.
and she was like sort of that one of those young, cool aunts that you have, right? It's like the youngest of my mom's siblings, and we lived not too far away from them when I was a kid, and we would drive over there every Sunday. Eva was still living with my grandparents at the time,
Okay.
and we would drive over every Sunday and have dinner. And she was like, "Oh boy, a little nephew to play with," you know. So we really connected. I mean, to this day, we still call each other all the time. That.
Nice.
So she had a few albums, and this one Beatles album, Twist and Shout, I just took to, and every time I was over, I said, "Eva, can you put on Twist and Shout?" And I started to learn all the words of the songs and everything. And everybody thought, "Oh, it's so cute." You know, this little. I must have been younger than 4. I think I was 4, but the time she finally just said, "Here, just take the album home with you, okay?" But it must have been like a year of every Sunday me going, "Put on Twist and Shout." Um, yeah, so I inherited it probably because I was listening to it more than she was by that point. So
Okay. And you
yeah.
decided at that point that you were going to become one of the Beatles, right?
I thought, yes, I thought Beatles probably was run like Menudo, where somebody would quit and they'd just find another one to replace them. It'd just be this revolving door of Beatles. I thought, oh, I could do that when I grow up. Because kids are like, I'm going to be a policeman, I'm going to be a
Of
fireman,
course.
I'm going to be at that time an astronaut. I was like, I'm going to be a Beatle. Like,
It's logical at that age. Absolutely.
yeah, it doesn't involve fire or guns or going up in a rocket that could explode. So I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to play a guitar. That's an easy way out. Sure.
Very nice. Now
Yeah.
you have you ended up with a really a big collection of record albums, um, and Bob Dylan, Elvis Costello, whatever it was, right?
Yeah. Yeah. With the Beatles, I started to collect like the entire Beatles collection. So by the time I was 9 or 10, I think I probably had almost all of their albums. And then my family moved to Aurelia. I met this kid in my class first day in the new school. His name was Chris Patch, and he liked a lot of the same music too. Which by that point, the Beatles were gone.
Mm.
All our classmates had no idea who they were, didn't care, and so we kind of connected. And then I would go hang out at his place because he just lived a couple of blocks away, and he had Rolling Stones and the Birds and the Animals. I'm like, oh, who are these guys?
Yeah,
So then I started expanding. I got started in all the British Invasion stuff, and then through buying a bunch of Birds for you could buy 45s still at the time. This is kind of just before CDs happened.
right.
So buying little 7-inch 45s by the Birds, you get Mr. Tambourine Man. I can't remember all the titles, but I kept seeing this little name in the writing credits, B. Dylan. Who's this B? That must be that Bob Dylan guy I've heard about. So I went to the library and borrowed a Dylan album. And it was his first electric album, Bringing It All Back Home, which had Subterranean Homesick Blues,
Mm.
Maggie's Farm. And it had his original, like his version of Mr. Tambourine Man, the acoustic version. And I was just by that time we were about 14, and I just went, what is this? Like everything, like his lyrics and his imagery, and it spilled over. It wasn't just on the record. Like he wrote the liner notes, and they're all in this weird stream of consciousness poetry. I'd never seen liner notes, that weren't talking about, fabulous and all those same adjectives and lots of exclamation marks. So to just read liner notes like that, I'm like, what is this? It's like, oh, we could do some with lyrics too. Oh, okay. So I went right down the Dylan rabbit hole for a while.
Right.
And then discovered Elvis Costello, who to me was almost a combination of the two. Like Costello has that kind of sense of sort of melodic structure that the Beatles would have had, but Costello could like snap a turn of phrase at you that you'll just like one sentence and it's stuck in your head forever because you think that is the best quote ever. I wish I'd written that. Yeah. And then all the new wave and punk stuff, from the late 70s, early 80s. Yeah.
For sure. Sounds great. Now, when did you personally start performing?
Well, I got my first guitar somewhere before I discovered Dylan. I would have been about 12. I got my first acoustic guitar, and it was only after months of begging my parents. And my dad finally a guy my dad worked with found one at a yard sale for $15.
Mm,
So that was my first guitar, was this piece of junk for $15, but it was just playable enough
right.
that I could get out the gate with it. So I practiced a lot. First time performing, must have been about 17 or something. I don't
You
even
were
remember.
performing where you were underage, performing in
Yeah,
bars where, even though you weren't of age, right?
yeah. And it was, I mean, by that time we were living in another small town, but my parents moved a few times during my childhood. So by that time we were in Owen Sound, I guess. Yeah, and there were a couple of little bars and pubs up there where sort of exaggerate, or maybe like, the manager like was a father of one of my friends at school, and so you go, okay, get up and play, but the inspector comes around, you got to run out that door.
No,
Yeah,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
that's a
You were both a solo performer and as well as with bands, right?
Yeah, I went through more little high school garage bands than I could count. I actually, like, about 20 years ago, I actually sat down and made a list. I couldn't believe them all. Like, I just threw, okay, that was summer of that year, and that was okay. That was oh yeah, that guy, right? So so I think probably half the bands that I was in, we broke up before we ever got a chance to play anywhere. So it was that kind of turnover, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and then I started to do the occasional solo thing too. I was always torn because I went, well, the Beatles and all these bands were great, but then you go, well, Dylan though, his early days, one guy with an acoustic guitar, and he could just, it was just incredible what he could do
Right.
with that sort of minimalistic setup. So I was kind of drawn to both. I mean, I like the sound and the fury of the drums and the amps, but I like the simplicity of being able to just, book a gig on your own, show up with your acoustic, play, and go home.
Right.
So I like both. And finally, the solo stuff kind of won out, much, largely for financial reasons, really. It just, once I moved to Toronto when I was in my 20s, it just became more and more expensive. And so the finances of trying to run a band in Toronto just became so prohibitive. Like, it got to the point where you were basically signing up to just lose money.
Oh,
And I thought, well, I'm just going to go solo. I can, I don't need a van. I don't need rehearsal space. I can practice at home and hop on the subway, and that's it. Yeah. So it was like, keep the overhead down,
right.
and I should walk out of the gig with some money. Yeah. Buy some groceries.
So is that where you're at now, a solo performer?
It's where I was at up to the pandemic, and the pandemic hit, and I watched like a lot of the places a lot of my regular gigs went one by one, went out of business,
Right.
and they haven't been replaced by anything yet. So the music scene in Toronto was real. I mean, anywhere really, was really decimated by
Yeah.
that, because venues needed to stay in business and a lot of them couldn't. So they're gone.
Yeah.
So what I sort of pivoted to, while the pandemic was happening and everything was locked up, I started recording at home, because I got a new computer with my CERB checks. Thank you, Ottawa. Thank you, True. Which I'm using right now. It's a little MacBook, but it came with all this great recording software. And I thought, well, I'll release stuff. I had released things I sort of recorded myself or done in small studios. And I thought, well, I know enough about this. I should be able to know which buttons to push and which knobs to turn and get a decent sound. So that's what I started doing. And now I sort of feel like I'm in my studio years now. Like some places are kind of starting to open. I've gotten a call from another place that said, hey, we're back. Do you want to play? I'm kind of like, nah, I don't know. I'm kind of liking this instead. It's a whole different thing, because, when you play locally, you kind of see the same faces, and that's nice, because there's a kind of sense of community or family. But with a recording thing, you wind up getting played in the weirdest places. Like a couple of albums ago, so I put out 4 albums during the pandemic. Like 2 albums ago, it got played in Singapore, Shanghai. Oh, I forget now. Okay,
And I was in China.
in Asia, one of those places that starts with an S and is Asia, and I'm blanking out because that was like months ago it happened. I forgot, but you sort of go, how did I wind up there? Like, once a month, Google your name and surprise yourself and find out where they're listening, and go, I don't know how they have heard of me, but okay, that's great. So I'm kind of liking that adventure now.
Very good. Now, what were the name of those albums that you put out?
Okay, so I had when the pandemic first happened, I used to work in a vintage guitar shop, and there were a lot of touring bands would come through. And I got to know some of the guys. Some of them would come through regularly, or they would just always stop into this one little store. And through that, I'd had this idea that it would be kind of cool to do like an instrumental thing, kind of like the Ventures, but with modern, almost like AC/DC sound. Like imagine if AC/DC just went instrumental or something like that. I had this kind of vague thing in my head. And I had, talked to some other guys who come through. And so when the pandemic happened, we didn't know if the world was ending or what.
Yeah.
I got in touch with a couple of these guys, and I had to be kind of careful. And they had to be careful too, because two of them were signed to labels, and they were small enough labels. They probably would have been cool with it, but they were like, okay, we don't tell anybody, we just do this. So we all adopted pseudonyms and started recording stuff at home and started sending like files back and forth. And we assembled this little EP. We called ourselves the Bumblebats. And so, those guys have since, like, the pandemic's lifted enough, they're back to gigging and touring and studio work and all that. So it's just like our little, secret club that we were part of briefly. So that was the first one. And then there's a TC folk punk one called Famous for 15 People. It came out in the spring of 2021. And then I sort of went back to the instrumental thing and thought, I really like the instrumental thing. I wonder if I could just play all the instruments with the help of, drums in the computer here. So I came up with another shtick called Cameronoise, and put out an album back in January. And it did really well. And then I did a TC folk punk album in April called Breakfast in Bedlam. And now I've got another Cameronoise one coming out. And the Cameronoise stuff, I think, is what I'm going to focus on and concentrate on now, because I've run out of lyrics.
So what type of music do you perform?
So this would be the Cameronoise thing is somebody described it as Booker T and the MGs meets the Smithereens in Paul McCartney's attic. And I laughed when I read that. So so it's instrumental. The guitars are very, crunchy, jangly, kind of heavy power pop kind of guitars, pretty heavy straight ahead drums.
Right.
And then the melodies are played on a sort of that Hammond B3 kind of organ sound that, Booker T was famous for.
Right. So now you mentioned like hearing your one of your songs on in Asia. Now, do you come on local radio at all?
Oh yeah. A lot of campus stations and that. And Nelson, there's a station, Nelson, BC, that play me, and CFBX, which is in Prince. Oh, I'm so bad with names. I should look this up before you called in.
BC? Prince, Prince Rupert, Prince George.
Prince George, yeah.
Okay.
It's one of the campus stations anyway.
Okay.
So they've been great about playing a lot of my stuff. So it does get played on sort of community and campus radio and other sort of independent stations around the world. And of course, there are a lot of people who have online stations as well, so it'll get played there. Trying to get onto commercial stations. I'm not on a major label, so it's not even going to happen. And I neither look nor sound like Ariana Grande, so that ain't going anywhere.
So what are you hoping for in the future?
More just slowly, have more people hear the music and hopefully like it. And I also, another thing I should mention too, I did a lot of the songwriting for a film called Stupid for You. Okay. Which I've got a little card for it here. And it's just been released. And coincidentally, the writer-director, Jude Clausen, is from Chilliwack.
All right.
So her father was Dr. David Clausen. Some of you might remember him. I don't know. He had a practice there in Chilliwack for decades. So Jude and I, we met a few years ago, and we collaborated on this. I just wrote a bunch of songs for this film, and Stupid for You is like a sort of an LGBTQ musical rom-com. Okay. Yeah.
No. So you have, let's see, you added the titles film composer and actor to your resume in 2015, right?
Yeah.
So you were part of the Canadian indie comedy film Love in the Sixth.
Yeah, which was also one of Jude's films. That was where the first one we worked on. I met her at a party just a couple of months before they were ready to start rolling the cameras. And it was around that time she started to have this idea that she wondered, should this be a musical? we met at a party, and Jude was sort of in the same room as I was at this party, and there was another singer-songwriter friend of mine there, and we had been seeing each other years,
Right.
and we started passing this acoustic guitar back and forth. Say, oh well, here's the last one I wrote, and oh, what's your new one? And so Jude overheard that and said to me later, said, I was listening to some of your original songs, and introduced herself and said, I've got this film coming out. Would you be interested in maybe having a couple of songs as a soundtrack? I'm like, yeah, sure. Who's going to say no to that, right?
Yeah.
So and one thing led to another, and then I wound up, she, after a couple of weeks, she said, can you act? I said, I think so, maybe, I don't know. I wound up being one of the stars in Love and the Six. I had one of the lead roles in Love and the Six. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And then that sort of, that collaboration, certainly the musical side of it, just kind of continued on to Stupid for You.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's cool. So but currently, what was this? Hold on now. You're currently making the film festival rounds, or that's Stupid for You is still, that was 2021.
Yes, Stupid for You came out. Yeah, its first hit festivals at the end of 2021. I think in November was its first one.
Okay.
And just this past week, actually, it had its theatrical release. It was like a one night only thing in a bunch of cineplexes across. So it's actually graduated to outside the festival circuit. So it got that next level. And there's some talk of it being on some sort of video on demand platform, but they're not saying which one. And that'll be about a month from now in August.
Right. Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Now, what has been described as, I'm just going over some of the things that are written here, so you have, let's see, in addition to, for Cameronoise, in addition to playing all the instruments on the 6-song collection, you also mixed and mastered the tracks, right? Mm-hmm. And designed the artwork as well.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you. It was like, the Cameronoise, I did all the artwork on the other two, the two TC folk punk ones that have come out in the last couple of years. One was the cover was a painting that a friend of mine, Leanne Beatty, did. And then the other was a photograph that a photographer friend of mine, Jeremy Gilbert, who's also a friend of Jude's. It was one that he took of this weird kind of sculpture up on a roof of a building downtown.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I fully did the artwork on just one.
Oh, very good. Now, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way?
Probably around you mean contact me? Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Probably if you go to Cameronoise, the Cameronoise page on Bandcamp, that's a good place. I sort of I have like two presences now. I've got the TC folk punk thing still happening, and I've got the Cameronoise thing, and there are separate, sort of Bandcamp pages for each one, and separate website. The TC folk punk has an Instagram, but Cameronoise has a Twitter and Facebook, and so I'm kind of all over the place. But folkpunk.com.
What was that?
Folkpunk.com.
Folk.
Yeah, folkpunk.com. If you go there, that goes to my Bandcamp site, and then just look for the little button that says contact, click that, and send me a message. That's probably the best way. Yeah.
Because I want to make sure that I put that when I render this, under your name, I'll have that there so people can know how to contact you. And of course, they can also find you probably on most of the social media.
Yeah, I'm on the big three: Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I just want to finish this off by reading this because I think it's so fun. Okay. He's also in charge of writing bios in the third person, which he suspects is something the Beatles never had to do.
I don't think they ever had to do that. No. I mean, we could try to ask the two surviving members, did you ever write your own bio? But they'd probably say, no, we had people. Yeah.
I mean, they had people. Like
they had people to do everything. Snobs. I know. They had chauffeurs. What? I take the subway. I don't even take the subway anymore. I walk everywhere now. They had chauffeurs.
Tell me about it. I don't have an editor. I don't have anything. I used to have a little crew, but now I've got nothing.
Oh, well.
It's all good. It doesn't matter. Still gets there. So what's the point? So who cares, right?
We'll all rebuild. We'll rebuild from the post-pandemic world. Yes.
Anyway, thank you, Cameron, for doing this with me. It's Cameron. I called you Cameron.
Well, okay, I sort of call myself Cameronoise.
Yeah,
On
that's right. Yeah. Thank you, Tim.
You're
For
welcome. Thank you,
doing
Nancy.
this. I really appreciate that. And I want to thank you, the audience, for watching. And I will put Tim's contact information. So if you want to get a hold of him and, have him come out and perform, join your band. Just
Yeah. Just follow me around. I'll do something interesting. I'll make it worth your while to watch me somehow.
wherever. Yeah, exactly. So thanks, everybody. Be nice and peace out.
All right. Thanks, Nancy.
Oops,
A sense of community, Chilliwack's a place to be. A sense of community where you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me. It's multicultural, you're sure to see it all. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see. Come party in the park, go dancing after dark. Chilliwack's a place to be, you'll see.